In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, June 13th, here in South Korea. The parliamentary hearing on state affairs, including Japan's planned release of Fukushima radioactive wastewater, continues today, with opposition lawmakers calling for a ban on all imports of fishery products from Japan and their ruling counterparts urging for refrain from baseless claims. Meanwhile, the diplomatic spat between Seoul and Beijing, sparked by Chinese Ambassador Shen Haiming's claim that South Korea was aligning with the US against China, continues to make headlines as both the presidential office here and the White House find fault with the claim. And top nuclear envoys from South Korea and the US meet in Washington on Monday to reaffirm their commitment against North Korea's persistent provocations while leaving the door wide open to dialogue. We start at the Nat'l Assembly on this Tuesday afternoon, that is, as the Q&A session on state affairs continue. Now, as was the case the day before, topping the agenda today is neighboring Japan's planned release of Fukushima radioactive wastewater. The opposition Democratic Party has strongly condemned Tokyo's plan and even called on the Yoon administration to ban imports of fishery products from Japan altogether. The ruling People Power Party, for its part, has been urging opposition lawmakers to refrain from baseless claims. Also, beyond the conflict over Fukushima's radioactive wastewater are disputes over labor issues and tangible efforts to address Korea's surplus rice. And in this following report, our National Assembly correspondent Ishihu covers the interaction earlier on Monday between Prime Minister Han Duck-soo and lawmakers regarding Japan's upcoming discharge of radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. To take a listen.
The number one hot topic of the day at the National Assembly's government interpellation session on Monday was Japan's plan to release wastewater from the destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant into the ocean. Lawmakers from the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea voiced concerns over the safety of fish caught off Fukushima, showing high levels of radioactivity.
Why think about Japan first when you have to worry about the safety of our citizens and the livelihoods of those in the fishing industry? I just cannot understand it.
One of those representing the government at the session was Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, who said that it's a misunderstanding or even a myth to say that the government called the highly radioactive fish from the region safe.
The South Korean government has never said that rockfish with high radioactivity levels that are being caught off Fukushima are safe. That's why South Korea is banning all fish imports from 8 prefectures in Japan.
Furthermore, he once again shared South Korea's plan to conduct an independent review to determine whether the disposal of the wastewater will be safe for South Korea.
The IAEA will conduct its tests. South Korea will also independently review its raw data and will ban imports of radioactive, contaminated fish from Japan until we consider them safe after review.
The ruling People Power Party once again asked for the exact stance of the government on the issue.
Mr. Prime Minister, what is the government's stance on the issue of Fukushima wastewater disposal?
The government's stance is the same as the previous government's, which is that the most important thing to consider in this issue is the citizens' health and safety, and that there needs to be scientific and objective verification.
Prime Minister Han then laid out the South Korean government's 3 continued requests to Japan.
First, provide and share thorough scientific evidence. Second, have discussions with the South Korean government in advance. And last, let South Korean experts participate in the IAEA's investigation process.
Meanwhile, the PPP has launched a task force called Saving Our Ocean, along with experts in the field, while the DPK has also formed a response team within the party to deal with the issue. Ishihu, Arirang News.
And in related news, Japan's launch of a trial on Monday of its planned discharge of Fukushima radioactive wastewater continues to fuel much condemnation from communities within the neighboring country and beyond. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
On Monday, Japan began a 2-week test run on the process for discharging nuclear contaminated water from the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. During the test run, the plant's operator, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, will mix fresh water and seawater and see whether a specific volume of water can flow to the sea. Ensuring safety is also on a checklist. TEPCO will also see if the shut-off system works well in the event of an emergency. Although there won't be any actual release, the start of the trial operations means a release could take place soon. In the actual dump process, the treated water, which has been decontaminated of all radioactive substances except tritium that's inseparable from water, will be mixed with seawater. Last week, Japan sent some 6,000 tons of seawater into a 1-kilometer-long underwater tunnel built in the nuclear power plant. The tunnel will be used to guide the contaminated water to a point about 1 kilometer offshore from the plant. Japan plans to have its water release system ready by the end of this month. A final report from the International Atomic Energy Agency on its inspection is expected in late June. Once everything is completed, Japan plans to begin the release of the wastewater sometime this summer. While Japan said it would not dispose of the water without consent from concerned parties, it is facing fierce opposition both at home and abroad. Last Saturday, Japan's industry minister Yasutoshi Nishimura met with representatives from local fisheries. There, they expressed grave concerns over the plan, saying the move is fueling anxiety about the future of fishing operations. Those from the neighboring countries are also worried.
If our consumers knew that nuclear radioactive water from the Fukushima power plant were dumped into the Pacific Ocean, Filipinos will be afraid to eat any marine life we have caught here in Manila Bay, because the dumped water is bad for the environment, for the fish, and of course can harm our health.
Hong Kong is also among those concerned. On Monday, Hong Kong's Environment and Ecology Bureau said it will enhance quarantine inspections on Japanese seafood, saying any necessary preparations such as procuring additional inspection equipment have already been completed. 신세벽, Arirang News.
In Washington back on Monday, top nuclear delegates representing the Yoon and Biden administrations have reaffirmed their commitment against actions by Pyongyang that destabilize regional security, while at the same time reiterating the importance of seeking tangible measures to engage the regime. Our foreign affairs correspondent Choi Min-jung explains.
South Korea and the U.S. have warned North Korea that there is nothing it can gain through provocations. Seoul's top nuclear negotiator Kim Gun and Washington's special representative for North Korea Sung Kim met in Washington on Monday and underlined the importance of making Pyongyang understand that its provocative behavior will have consequences. The two allies agreed to strengthen efforts to cut off funds going into the North's nuclear and missile development programs. Kim Gun also highlighted that cooperation with the U.S. as well as Japan will advance as the three countries will simultaneously take seats at the UN Security Council next year. He added Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo will make the utmost efforts to make sure that the UNSC no longer remains silent on the regime's provocations. The talks follow North Korea's failed launch of its spy satellite last month. And to counter a widely anticipated second launch by the regime, Sung Kim said the U.S. will respond alongside South Korea and Japan, potentially through sanctions and military action. At the same time, both sides also reiterated their commitment to engaging Pyongyang, saying they are willing to meet the North without preconditions, instead of passively waiting for the regime to return to dialogue. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the diplomatic spat between Seoul and Beijing, sparked by Chinese Ambassador Xing Haiming's claim that South Korea was aligning with the U.S. against China, continues to intensify as both the presidential office here and the White House weigh in on the matter. Our senior foreign affairs correspondent Pyongyang has the latest.
South Korea is a sovereign independent nation that has the right to make foreign policy decisions that it deems appropriate. That's according to White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby, speaking about China's ambassador to South Korea, Xing Haiming, who said last week that it would be wrong for Seoul to bet on Beijing's defeat, apparently criticizing South Korea's foreign policy leaning towards the U.S. In a press briefing on Monday U.S. local time, the senior White House official also added that it appears as if there was some sort of, quote, pressure tactic being used. An official from Seoul's presidential office had also said Monday that an ambassador's role is to act as a bridge between two countries, and that if that bridge does not conduct its role properly, it can harm the national benefits of both countries. The official also told reporters that under Article 41 of the Vienna Convention, diplomats must respect the laws of the receiving state, and that it's also their duty not to interfere in the internal affairs of that state. It's rare for South Korea's top office to openly criticize an ambassador from a particular country, meaning that the government is taking the situation seriously. In response, the Chinese Foreign Ministry simply said it's the ambassador's job to meet and communicate with a wide range of officials in order to boost its relations with South Korea. All this diplomatic controversy comes as the Chinese ambassador had said last week that South Korea was entirely to blame for the many difficulties in bilateral relations, and that Seoul will certainly regret it later.
Some are betting that the United States will win and China will lose, but clearly this is a misjudgment.
As both sides continue to exchange harsh comments, it appears that it'll take some time before the two countries find a way to repair ties. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol is scheduled to attend the General Assembly of the International Bureau of Expositions in Paris next week. Plans to this end were disclosed by the president himself during a cabinet meeting earlier on this Tuesday. He added the trip will be a chance to share Busan's vision for the 2030 World Expo, which he claimed was different. The two-day General Assembly begins on June 21st and is the fourth round of presentations by bidding countries, including Italy and Saudi Arabia. Also making note of the global race for advanced technology, including chips and batteries, President Yoon called for all-out related efforts to sharpen Korea's competitive edge. He also pointed out that reforms within the higher academic arena are essential to foster future talent in technology. On the corporate front, a sigh of relief from chipmakers here as U.S. media reports claim Washington may extend existing exemptions for Korean companies from U.S. export controls, permitting them to pursue their chipmaking operations in China. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
While the United States is banning the export of semiconductor production equipment to China, it's been reported that it will extend the export control moratorium applied to South Korean companies. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal on Monday, U.S. Undersecretary of Commerce for Industry and Security Alan Estevez met with officials from the Semiconductor Industry Association last week and announced that he would extend the suspension of U.S. semiconductor equipment export controls to South Korean and Taiwanese companies for the time being. If realized, the move will come after the U.S. Department of Commerce announced last October export controls that effectively prohibited U.S. companies from exporting semiconductor equipment to Chinese semiconductor manufacturers, while applying a one-year moratorium on Samsung and SK Hynix, two South Korean chipmakers, which have factories in China. The report analyzed that the extension of the moratorium shows the difficulty of isolating China's high-tech industries in a highly connected world economy. It also warned that the latest decision would weaken U.S. export controls aimed at slowing China's technological progress. Concerns have been growing among U.S. lawmakers who believe that South Korean companies like Samsung and SK Hynix will replace Micron's market share in China after Beijing banned the sales of goods from the U.S. chipmaker. And with this, the Wall Street Journal reports the U.S. government is seeking to prepare separate standards for Korean companies producing semiconductors in China. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In the U.S., Wall Street rallied on Monday ahead of the U.S. Federal Reserve's interest rate decision pegged for Wednesday local time. The S&P 500 rose 0.93%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq gained 1.53%, with both markets closing at their highest since April 2022. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.56%. The rally comes amid expectations that the Fed will hold rates steady during this week's meeting. But investors remain wary of the U.S. Consumer Price Index, which is set for release on Tuesday. Should the index outcome exceed market forecast, the chances of a rate hike are reportedly back on the cards. And staying in the U.S., the country is poised to rejoin UNESCO nearly 6 years after former President Donald Trump withdrew from the UN agency. The announcement was made by UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay on Monday, ahead of a related vote by member states next month. The decision comes a week after Washington submitted a letter formalizing its intent to rejoin. The Biden administration has agreed to pay more than $600 million owed to the organization after the US stopped making payments in protest over Palestine's membership in 2011. The Trump administration withdrew its membership in 2018, alleging mismanagement and anti-Israel bias at UNESCO. Ukraine's armed forces are braving adverse weather conditions to fiercely take back territory from Russian occupation. Now, this is according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Our Yoon has more on Kyiv's counter-offensive.
According to the Ukraine's deputy defense minister on Monday, the country's military forces successfully conducted counteroffensive operations over the weekend. Despite the small size of the villages that Ukraine has claimed to have recaptured from Russian occupation, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in his nightly video address on the same day that progress is being made on the battlefield and necessary losses are being inflicted.
The battles are fierce, but our movement is underway, and that is crucial. The enemy's losses are exactly what we need, and although the weather these days is unfavourable, the rains complicate our task, nevertheless, the strength of our soldiers yields results.
Meanwhile, Russia has been using thermobaric rocket launchers to strike Ukraine, which had been stalling the counteroffensive. But according to a Washington, D.C.-based think tank, the Institute for the Study of War, Ukraine appears to have destroyed at least 2 of those TOS-1A launchers using the U.S.-supplied Paladin 155mm artillery system. Moscow has yet to officially acknowledge any Ukrainian advances, but Kyiv said on Monday it wrested away 7 villages spanning roughly 90 square kilometers since the weekend and made small gains near the eastern city of Bakhmut. The AP is reporting that Ukrainian forces are fighting house by house and meter by meter, pointing to how difficult the battle will be for Ukrainian units. Russia has superiority in terms of men, ammunition, and air power, but some Western military analysts say Ukraine is attempting an extraordinarily difficult tactical operation and that it was too early to draw conclusions. They added that results of the initial assault may be showing that Ukraine is testing Russian defenses and should not be overinterpreted. Yoon, Arirang News.
Back here in Seoul, today, June 13th, marks the 10-year anniversary of K-pop superstars BTS. In celebration, major landmarks across the capital city are being lit up in purple, the group's color. Starting yesterday, Sebitsam Island, Namsan Ta, Seoul City Hall and Dongdaemun Design Plaza are among the places in purple. Also starting this evening, Sebitsam Island and the Sejong Center will feature BTS-themed digital artwork on their outer walls every day except Mondays. Both events will continue until Sunday, June 25th.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the United States, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Monday that the Biden administration has taken steps that have hindered efforts by China to expand its global spying network. The steps included diplomatic engagement and information exchange with governments that considered hosting Chinese bases. Blinken's comments come after a report by the Wall Street Journal on Thursday last week cited U.S. officials as saying that Cuba allegedly hosted Chinese spy facilities capable of electronic eavesdropping. According to Blinken, the facilities were supposedly upgraded in 2019. But Havana has pushed back at the allegation, calling it slanderous, while Beijing has said that the spying claims are false. The updates come as Blinken is set to visit Beijing later this week in an effort to soothe strained diplomatic ties. In Germany, NATO has begun its largest ever Air Force drills. The 2 weeks of drills started on Monday and involve over 250 aircraft from 25 NATO and partner countries. More than 10,000 soldiers are also taking part in the drills, called Air Defender 23. They have been planned since 2018. The first flights took off from 3 German airfields with drills focused on cargo and refueling planes. The exercises are meant to improve interoperability and preparedness. And they are also meant to send a message that the alliance can defend itself. Officials say the drills are not targeted at anyone. Moving on to the Philippines, nearly 13,000 people have been evacuated from their homes on Luzon Island as a nearby volcano on Sunday began spewing lava and sulfuric gas. According to experts, Mount Mayon generated 21 weak volcanic earthquakes on Sunday, as well as 260 rockfalls and lava flow activity. They warned that a hazardous eruption is possible within weeks or days, and that the increased activity could cause rockfalls, landslides, and ballistic fragments. Most residents in the area started evacuating from Thursday last week, when the alert level was raised to 3 out of a possible 5. Authorities also moved 10,000 farm animals to safer areas. Mount Mayon is one of the world's most active volcanoes. It last erupted in 2018, displacing thousands of people. And finally, in Ecuador, a 76-year-old woman came back to life during her wake. Relatives of Bella Montoya Tapia were alerted when they heard a banging sound coming from her coffin. The elderly lady had officially been declared dead at a local hospital in the town of Babahoyo just hours earlier. Health authorities say she was hospitalized on Friday for a presumptive cerebrovascular accident and had a cardiorespiratory arrest. Tapia is now in intensive care and is receiving treatment. The Ecuadorian government has launched an investigation into the hospital. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Passing rain and isolated storms are in the forecast across Korea again. A chance of strong wind with hail cannot be ruled out. So more wild weather is in the forecast with 5 to 40 millimeters of rain expected this afternoon, including in Daegu, where heavy showers could fall in the mid-afternoon, dropping 20 millimeters an hour for a couple of hours, whereas the capital region has a slim chance of getting passing rain today. Until it rains, the skies will remain sunny. Along with sunshine, UV rays will boost to very high levels in central regions, and high ozone levels are expected for most parts of the country. But the air quality will be decent nationwide all day today. Afternoon highs are similar to yesterday, with a high of 29 degrees in Daejeon, Gwangju, and Gyeongju, and Daegu will be topping out at 30 degrees Celsius. Now the chances of sudden rain and hail last through Thursday, while temperatures warm up, possibly reaching up to 31 degrees Celsius by Sunday in the capital. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions. And those are the headlines at this hour, but we have our panel session coming up right after this break, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.